Hello, everybody. Welcome to Journey to the Center of You podcast. It's myself, Miss Trish, and I have Matthew on with me. We're going to bring to you some incredible information about ego death, how to understand experiencing it, what it's about, and some clarifications involved. So Matthew had an experience within the last week that really put forth some information on when you actually experience this, the reactions needed, understanding it. So Matthew, I'll kind of let you introduce yourself and go into that a little bit.
Okay. Hey, everybody. My name is Matthew Tucciaroni. I have a podcast called Jurisdiction, Reclaiming Your American Status. And I met Trish Violet through the Bonds for the Wind that we're currently working on. And so a lot has come up in the last month. A lot of changes, Trish, is what I'm going through right now. And I think a lot of people that are in this patriot movement are being triggered in every aspect of their life, whether it's to get rid of certain things, to allow new stuff to come in, new energies, getting closer to God. I know God is definitely testing us and testing the strength of our will as we, the people, especially here in America. But the other night, it's been the last couple of weeks have been a crazy roller coaster for me. I want to say that this definitely plays a part into what happened to me in meditation a couple nights ago. But the background is I'm going through a lot. I'm doing a lot of podcasts lately. I'm interacting with so many different types of people. I was just at the Clay Clark event in San Diego last week, and so that was pretty intense as well. Met a lot of white hats, met a lot of black hats and gray hats all in one event. So got to see kind of like the good and the evil all at once. And so I was in meditation and a couple days ago, and I remember it was like I was sleeping, but not asleep as well. But I still had no physical control over a lot of things that were going on. I remember being I was in a panic. I had a lot of panic in me throughout this meditation process, and I literally thought I was going to die. I thought I was already dead, or I was going to die. And one minute I would see a vision of me at the corner of my bedroom, and then literally after seeing that vision, I'm in the corner of the bedroom. So like I was able to start seeing things before they were happening, seeing my every move ahead of time. It was like I was ahead of certain things. And I guess that caused me to panic and to freak out. So I remember falling to the ground at one point when I was in the corner of my room. And I remember, and part of me as well, I'm an American State National, and we're learning how to stand on our 2 feet again as a free sovereign. So I remember trying to get up on the floor, and it was so hard for me to get up. It was so hard for me to lift my body off the floor, but I did it. I had to grab onto my dresser, and I had to literally brace myself up like this, kind of like in a gym pose at the gym, to get myself lifted up. And as soon as I did that, in my head, I said, as soon as you stand on your own 2 feet, you're free again. And I remember, for some reason, my bed was where I thought getting away from my bed and standing up directly and walking away, I felt like the chains detach from me. So it was almost like me being in this one area of the room, which was my bed, that was kind of like my slave ship. And the minute I walked away from it, and this is all in meditation, this wasn't, I was, like I said, halfway, I want to say in a state of being where you're not asleep, but you are asleep. And I just remember just standing on my own 2 feet and walking to this corner of my room. And I also at one point felt like we're part of this machine that keeps this matrix going. I felt like we're part of this machine and we're all playing a part in keeping this machine alive until we really discovered the truth of who we are. And what I gathered from that vision was the more people that stand on their own 2 feet and walk away from this machine, the more we can free ourselves from this matrix together as a collective. So, I mean, I remember just like even just coming to it, and I had like my lampshade in my hands, and like it was like I could not control what I was doing. And I was sitting there moving this lampshade around, projecting all around. And it was like me holding the moon and projecting the moon's light onto the earth and illuminating everything. It was like we're part of that projection. It was by far the craziest thing ever. I've heard about ego deaths, and sometimes when you meditate like that, when you have a lot going on and you're about to be very, you're about to be activated, your DNA, your junk DNA and strands are becoming activated within you as you seek this truth. So this whole concept of dying, Trish, you put it to me like this, that you weren't dying, your ego was. So that's kind of my story. My experience, but I hope I did a justice of doing that, because those realms that you tap into sometimes can be very tricky. So I'm just learning how to use it, I guess.
Okay, so yeah, what an incredible experience, and what I'm learning about this ego death is, again, I've also heard it called a shadow self. Ego responds to fear. Ego is who you are told to identify yourself as. So for me, it would be, I am Trish. For you, it would be I am Matthew. I am a nurse. I am a mother. Yes, we are all those things, but we are conditioned to believe that we need to label ourselves as something to benefit this reality. So everything that is in our outside world is manifested from our inside world. So everything in the outside world is projected from how we feel about the world from in here. Does that make sense? So,
Okay.
so by you saying, the lamp is a projection, it really is. The lamp is a projection of your own consciousness because you believe that lamp is there. I believe that I am Trish. I believe that I am a nurse. I believe that I am spiritual. Yes, we are all those things, but we project that out into our reality, as opposed to, you know, as opposed to you responding or reacting is a better word for it, as opposed to you reacting to your environment. How the universe actually works is your environment reacts or responds to you. So the environment is going to react to what you believe it is. So getting rid of ego is identifying yourself as being one with the universe, being a fractal of the universe, being in the know that everything is projected around you from in here, and then understanding that you have the ability to project with your own thinking, your own thoughts, how you would like your reality to look by thinking your own thoughts. So in this reality for thousands of years, we have been conditioned to accept that we have to be told how the reality should look like, when we should be projecting our own reality with our own thoughts. So you mentioned in your experience that you were doing repetitive movements, and it wasn't until you stood on your own feet that kind of stopped. Is that correct? Mhm.
Correct. Yeah, everything was in repeat, like the the same. Yeah, I could see everything in repeat, from the way I was moving the lamp and from going over to the corner. It was like it was in repeat.
Yes, and that's a reality of the collective right now from this programming. So, you know, having blind faith of our so-called leaders on this planet telling us how to be, when to be at work, you know, when to cook your dinners, when to abide by time, instead of understanding that we should be doing that ourselves, by using the fractalization of God, the universe inside of ourselves. We have ultimately accepted the reality that we are told what to do and how to think. And when TV started coming around in, you know, the 40s and 50s, especially, during that time, electronics kind of took over our thinking, you know. And when we, for example, when we spend, you know, such and such amount of time watching CSI, our thoughts are on repeat about people killing people and murders, and the world is a dangerous place, you know. So we ultimately project those thoughts into our reality and create that reality. So we've literally been stuck in this reality because we are told what to think by this programming. So the free thought is kind of an illusion right now on this planet, unfortunately. So we're in that repeat mode. And then, you know, we work 9 hours a day, and then we come home and watch these shows about how horrible humans could be. And then we take those thoughts, project them, and then that's how we think the world is. So we literally create that environment, we create that world. So how to break out of that is literally start thinking for yourself. I mean, really, standing on your own 2 feet, understanding that you can change your thought patterns at any time. We do not have to be stuck in that cycle. We need, and unfortunately, we've kind of again accepted this. We unknowingly accepted this, and we have to break out of that. We have to say, no, I'm not going to think how you want me to think. I'm going to think how I want to think. Being a fractal of the universe, being a fractal of God, I have the ability to change my thoughts at any time and project whatever I want into my reality. And the more and more of the collective that can do this, the better off the collective is going to be, the better off the reality is going to be. Because we ourselves are just one soul fractal of the collective itself, and then it goes larger. We're also, you know, one soul fractal of the universe itself. So, but right now we're working on freeing the planet. So our focus needs to be on the collective right now. So I have entered the realm that you have entered several times, and it can be very fearful, because what you're actually doing is you're actually picking up on the energy of the collective. The collective right now is like one big traumatized individual, you know, consciousness. It's a very scary place, because we have all ultimately projected this reality of murder, and you know how horrible humans can be. So we've got to get out of that thinking. So so how do you feel about that?
Well, it definitely makes sense, Trish, because I believe what all of us are doing is we're pretty much in the point of no return right now, and we're pretty much freeing ourselves. And I think for those who are on the front lines, like yourself and I, we are definitely, one, we're being tested. Two, we're definitely seeing the matrix for what it is. Not your if everyone saw what we see, they'd be even more traumatized right now. And I think that where we're at right now, I believe, is we've won in the spiritual realm, and now we're bringing it down here to win.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of how I take from this. And, you know, is there anything that we can do? I guess, to do when we do go through an ego death? Is there anything that we can take from it? Like what exactly is happening with this ego death? Is this like us activating more of our DNA? Is this like leveling up? What exactly is going on here so that the collective understands like
Yeah, and it's all of the above, to be honest with you, because when we kind of push our egos aside, we no longer have to react to everything. We should be more responsive instead of reactive, and we should understand that we are a part of the whole. So the opposite of ego is actually being humble. So we need to most definitely stop reacting to fear. The best way to do that is to cut yourself off from, mainstream media. Understand that, again, not everything needs a reaction. So we should identify ourselves as being a part of the collective. Okay, the more that we can do that, we can understand how we see our own spiritual growth has a ripple effect on the whole collective. And again, if you and I have an argument, for example, if you and I have an argument, and I become defensive, it's my ego that's bruised, it's my ego that's defensive and trying to fight with you. Whether in some way my ego was triggered. So the better response would be, hey Matthew, I see I see your point of view. Let's work this out on a better level. Instead of us both being defensive, we should see the underlying lesson, because whatever the issue is, whatever we're having an argument about, it's a lesson for both of us. Whether it's for you to have patience, the lesson may be different for me to have a understanding, or me to have empathy. So that is pushing our ego aside and understanding that you and I on some level are different fractals of one whole. Does that make sense?
yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yep. And
Yeah.
as far as trying to get this information out to the collective, that's what we're doing now. Unfortunately, with the stories that they're trying to push in the media, everybody's ego is triggered, everybody is defensive, and we can see from what I mentioned earlier, with everything being a projection of your inner world, you can see how ego is running the world right now. Ego is at its all-time high. So we have to be more empathetic. We have to be more in service to others. We have to understand how our thoughts actually manifest into our reality. So the more we put our guns aside, internally, the more we become less defensive and more understanding, the more we're going to shove that ego aside and start actually projecting from the light side of ourselves, the more humble part of ourselves. So that is a big part of ego death. Now, for some people, it happens quick, like I think it did for you, or at least you got the first taste. For me, when I started looking into it, I realized this is actually what I've been teaching all along. So I received an inkling of what ego death was about when I had a near-death experience, and what it meant to be without ego completely. So, and that is just being the observer. So really, we are not the ones doing the actions. We are the consciousness that is observing us doing the actions. So when we change that and we become the observer, we can that's when we learn how to think for ourselves, because we can change our actions at any time. We do not have to be in the repetitive cycle. When somebody's ego is triggered, that's really when we go into the repetitive cycle, and because it may bring up old traumas, it may bring up old issues from childhood, or whatever the case may be, and then we literally go back to that trauma, and we literally react as if we are reacting to that trauma. So, um, for everybody, I think it happens a little bit differently. The understanding is going to be different. The whole point being, let's not react from our shadow self. Let's not react from our ego. Let's not be defensive. Let's react or respond rather more from our light side, more from our empathetic side. See ourselves as a part of the whole and how we affect the whole in general. So.
Absolutely. I love this topic because I think a lot of people are going to be going through this very soon. And they're not going to know what's hitting them. And I really think that we're on the precipice of something larger than us being shown right now. And I've definitely, I had a couple situations happen to me this week after that whole ego death experience, where one, I was in a situation where I got to a place where I met some people at a restaurant for a quick second. I had some exchange to do with somebody, and certain people were there, and it felt like they were conspiring against me. So my ego totally, and what I've been through with the trauma and people coming after me before, so my ego automatically was like in defense mode. But then I took a breath and I said, don't react to this. I'm sure there's something here that is not a conspiracy against you. And lo and behold, 5 minutes later, I'm walking home with one of the individuals, and they even told me, they're like, oh my God, you must have thought like this was an ambush. Like, I just happened to run into these people. It wasn't like we called you up here to conspire against you. And she was like, I saw it in your face when you showed up. Like, oh my goodness, like, what is this? But, I would say 6 months before this, I probably would have flipped. I would have flipped out. I would have.
Sure,
Flipped.
absolutely. Right. That's a great example actually of how to be responsive from your light side as opposed to your ego. Ego comes in immediately and just thinks the worst. And then it feeds off of the fear that you create from it. So understanding the bigger picture, I think might have been the lesson there. So, and we also have to understand, as you said earlier, God does test us sometimes. God puts us in those positions to see what our reactions are going to be. And he's trying to teach us not to react to everything. So, in which you did. So, so that's a great example. And some of this too, going back to the trauma issue, is we have so much trauma as a collective, not just individually, but as a collective. Look at what the world's been through in just the past 100 years, in just the past 100 years. And then you go back 1,000 years, 2,000 years. We have so much untouched, unresolved trauma individually. And then it goes into the collective that we need to start looking at. We need to start looking at our traumas, understanding why we went through that, what the lesson was in that trauma. It could have been, again, be more patient, be more understanding. Forgiveness is a lot of times the lesson in trauma. So sometimes, we are put in situations that ultimately really, really hurt us, and they do traumatize us, but we're not understanding that we were supposed to be learning something in forgiveness at that time. And it could be forgiveness of self too. That's a big one that a lot of us are having trouble with. So we need to go into those traumas, understand what the purpose was, what lesson did you get out of it, and that ultimately heals us. And this could be inner child, this could be something that happened last week. It doesn't, there's no time limit on it, but us as a collective, we've got to start looking at that, because that's ultimately going to put us in the next stage of evolution on our spiritual path. So there is a lot of question on whether us as a species are going to crumble under the weight of our own traumas, if we're going to understanding from a larger point of view and move on. So and once we unblock those traumas, we are going to move on, but we have to understand how to do so. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it definitely makes sense. And we also, and the thing is, Trish, is we've been lied to for so long that this matrix that they have us enslaved in, it goes so deep that, you know, I'm a believer that there was a great reset in the 1800s, and that a lot of our traumas are stemming from our historical traumas,
Sure.
that our the you know that what our ancestors went through during this great reset to reset this entire planet in the 1800s. And I feel like that's why there's so many people that are just losing their shit right now,
Yes.
because there's trauma that's encoded in our DNA, that is in our lineage, that goes way back prior to this great reset that I believe in the 1800s and during. There's what's it called, there's unresolved issues that
Absolutely.
stem way back to even before we were here. And I
Yeah.
think people now are starting to wake up to, like, I mean, gosh, you know the type of work I'm in. I'm discovering that, America is not America. It never was America, even prior to the revolution, even at the revolution. We're
Right.
starting to find out things, that our country was pretty much a lie ever since inception.
Yes.
It's just, that's what we're finding out
Right.
right now. So many people we're waking up to that truth. And what's it going to take? I mean, it's honestly going to take just standing on your own 2 feet and questioning, and knowing that everything we've been told was a complete lie. When you wake up from that, there is no going back. There is no going back.
Right. And once you understand that part, you're going to start questioning everything, and we should, because the things that are going to come out, as part of, I don't want to say disclosure, like a drip disclosure, the things that we are discovering are going to hurt. They are going to hurt, and we're going to create more trauma from it. So, the message right now needs to get out to the people is, we are going to have more trauma. We're going to have the history trauma, and then we're going to have current trauma, and we're going to find out everything has been a lie. That we've been enslaved in a reality that we have ultimately put ourselves in and accepted by the people that think that they run the world.
Right.
We're going to have to get through that as well. So,
And stop blaming others, blame yourselves. All of us are responsible for
yeah,
what has happened to this entire planet. We let it happen. So
that's
quit pointing the fingers, like, yes, do they suck? Biden and all those guys? Of course, yes. But quit saying they did this to me, they did that to me. No, we did this to ourselves. We
yeah,
live in Mickey says this all the time. We live in a free will realm. We allowed the illusion to trick us. We gave them consent.
that's
We
right.
did it. So and God knows this, in order for us to now undo this, we have to take back the consent we gave them and
Yes,
give ourselves consent, and especially give him consent.
that's right.
The one, he's the executor here. We're the trustees of this planet. So
Yes.
until we learn that we did this ourselves, we're not going to get anywhere. People need to start actually blaming themselves for what has happened.
You are 100% correct. 100% correct. And that's going to hurt when people find out they've done it to themselves unknowingly, but we still accepted it. We've allowed it to happen. For how long? How long, we don't actually know. I'm going to say at least a few thousand years.
Oh, yeah.
But especially in the last, I would say 70 years or so, when technology started coming out, we've allowed the machines to think for us. And by machines, I mean the TVs, the cell phones, the news outlets. We've allowed them to do our thinking for us. And we have to understand, like you said, we've allowed this, we've done this, we've created that reality that they wanted us to create. We gave permission. We've got to retract that permission and start, as you said, giving ourselves permission, giving God permission to lead us. I agree.
Yep.
And when we start the experience you had was so powerful because I had just received a message in a dream, not a couple nights prior, that I was in a meeting talking about ego death and how the message needed to get out there. And so when you had that experience, I said, yes, we can, that is one great example to bring to the collective on what it's like. And like I said earlier, I believe you had this experience in the spiritual realm, and things are manifested in the spiritual realm before they are trickled down to the physical realm. So the more of us individually that can have that experience in the spiritual realm. And remember, I told you, the first time can be scary because you are feeling the energy of the collective, who the collective is very traumatized right now, and everybody's ego is triggered. We have so much fear flying around with the war stories and the virus stories and everything, which is what they wanted. They wanted to create chaos, and we've allowed it to happen, as you said. But once you can accept that you have felt what the collective is, we have to feel the energy of the collective to understand how to change it from an individual point of view. So, and it starts with you, it starts with me, it starts with my family, it starts with your family, all individually. We need to understand that we can no longer create the fear. We can no longer let our egos run us individually. And there is something called the 100th monkey effect, that once one monkey figures it out, usually it doesn't take too much time for the rest of the monkeys to figure it out. And we are so connected consciously, that it literally makes a ripple effect. So once one figures it out that, hey, we shouldn't spread this fear anymore, we shouldn't react to the fear anymore, then the rest of them figure it out. So especially with the message going around, with us teaching this, with us, helping others understand what our ego is and how to have balance with it. I don't want to say suppress it, because it does give, there are certain times when we should react with fear, like when we're about to be mauled by a bear or something, so one of our primitive. So it's more about bringing the balance back and understanding. Usually that first couple seconds of thought that comes into your mind when you are introduced to a situation, like you said, whenever you ended up in a meeting with people that you felt were conspiring against you, that was your ego saying, oh no, they're conspiring against you. So then you kind of have to shove that aside and tell yourself, as the observer, let's look at this from a bigger point of view. What else could be going on? Why does my first reaction have to be fear? Why does my first reaction have to be that they're all against me? What is the bigger picture? And the collective can do this too. Why is everybody pushing fear? Why do I have to react to fear? Why is it that they're pushing, these war stories? Because they're trying to get the collective to manifest the war reality. And we cannot give it to them this time. We cannot give it to them this time. So I hope that makes sense. Matthew, did you have anything else that you wanted to add to this?
Honestly, I mean, I think that we're going to shift very soon. And I think that instead of being enemies with the ego, it's more like, this is on one of my yoga tracks that I do yoga to. It talks about the ego, how you, the man, and I mean that in human beings, mankind, not gender specific, but the man becomes partners with the ego. You become partners, and you learn how to work together, per se. That's kind of how I feel right now. We got to have ego for survival. It's there. But we got to learn how to work with it.
Exactly, bringing the balance back, not letting the ego have control, but not necessarily, letting it go completely, because we still need to question everything. But bringing the balance back, understanding what is your ego and what is your light side, and deciphering, our reactions. What is our first reaction? Was this reaction from ego, or is this from light side? How should I respond in this situation? So it's more about thinking before you do anything, and understanding that whatever response you give is going to be mirrored back to you. So do we want to make that a response from ego, or rather a reaction from ego, or do we want to make this a response from our light side? So yes, understanding each other, I guess, is a better way to put that, rather than ego death. But ego death to me, really just means not letting your ego run your world, not reacting every single time to ego and fear and defensiveness, understanding that side of you and learning to put it in its place, I should say, when it needs to be in its place. So I hope that clarifies more of everything. And unfortunately, we kind of talked about this before. Sometimes the more we work on ourselves, the more that we are, in a sense, spiritually attacked. And there are going to be tests from God as well. We do need to understand what each one is. So this is where that ego death comes into play, because when you understand what the ego is, when you are attacked, or when you're being tested, you can understand that we are being tested to see which side of us is going to react or respond. So in everything, every action, every thought is manifested back to you eventually. That is called karma. It's like a boomerang effect. So really, this is breaking free of the cycle of karma, to where we put out more good karma than bad karma or negative karma. So with our egos running our world, then we have created more negative karma bouncing back at us. So understanding that is going to be key in taking us to the next level spiritually. So all right, was there anything else you would like to add?
No, well, thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for the clarification. And this is definitely something that people need to hear for sure, especially the patriots out there that are on the front lines.
Yes.
I know it's been tough, guys. I get it. Trust me. We've Trish, you've been through it. We know what it's like to be on the front lines, and it's an honorable job, I will say. I don't think there's anything bad about being a patriot at all.
No, nothing at all.
We love God first. He comes first.
Yeah.
But then we have our country, our love for country, that we were given a document that is the most spiritual man-made document out there, even though we're supposed to be following the doctrines of God. In the Bible, our Constitution was so close to being the most spiritual piece of literature man has ever written. And that was because of our affinity and love for God. So I just want to say, to the patriots out there, I know a lot watch your channel and watch mine. God bless you guys, seriously, and just know that whatever kind of attacks you're going through, or if you're going through an ego death, it's all part of the process, and that we've been chosen to do this work. Just know that it's an honorable position we're all in. So Thank you to all the other patriots out there.
Absolutely, I agree. And we choose ourselves. We choose ourselves to go down this path. We can quit at any time, but I haven't met a patriot yet that is willing to quit. So we keep fighting for God, we keep fighting for country, and that's just how it's going to be. So we live and we learn how to respond and react appropriately, and that's all there is to it. The closer we get to God, the closer we get to source. So yeah, and thank you, Matthew, for being on. And then within the next week or so, stay tuned, guys, because we are going to do some information on the 12 tribes and the 144,000. So we're pretty excited to bring that information to you. So stay tuned. And again, the Patriots keep fighting, keep fighting. This is not all for naught. You know, there is a better place waiting for us. We just have to get over the hurdle. So keep up the good work, guys. We love you all. Matthew, again, thanks for coming on. And
Thank
we'll
you
see
for
you.
having me.
Absolutely. We'll see you guys next time.